They always told me I was just the backup plan, that I'd never be smart, talented, or worthy. But when I quietly took control of my grandmother's house and made the boldest decision of my life, I finally proved to everyone, including my golden boy brother and overbearing parents, that I was more than they ever imagined. My name is Daniel Harris, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the backup plan in my own family. My older brother, Michael, was the golden child, the one who was smart, talented, and destined to accomplish great things. And me, I was just the one who was expected to keep the lights on, pay the bills, and stay out of the way. When I was younger, I didn't see it. In fact, I looked up to Michael. He was everything I wasn't: confident, charming, quick with answers in school, and adored by everyone. My parents practically glowed when he entered a room. Teachers praised him, coaches wanted him on their teams, and relatives loved to brag about him at family gatherings. When Michael got into Harvard, it was like the world stopped turning just to celebrate him. My parents threw a huge party in our backyard in Boston, invited half the neighborhood, and kept saying, "Our Michael is going to change the world." When I graduated from a local state college with a degree in construction management, my mom's only response was, "Well, at least you'll always have steady work." It wasn't meant to be cruel, or maybe it was, but those words stuck to me like a tattoo I never asked for. They didn't see me as ambitious, or talented, or capable of something extraordinary. They saw me as functional, practical, someone who existed to hold things together in case Michael's dreams didn't work out. The roles only got clearer as we got older. Michael was the visionary. He traveled the world, wrote articles, appeared at conferences. He was the Harris legacy. I was the one who stayed home and did the heavy lifting. When my dad's truck broke down, I fixed it. When my mom needed her roof patched, I climbed up there with the shingles. When my cousin needed a loan to cover her medical bills, guess who they called? Every time, it was me. And every time, I gave money, time, labor, whatever they needed. I kept telling myself it was normal, that this was just what families did. But deep inside, I was keeping score, and the more I gave, the more it burned that no one seemed to notice. The breaking point came after my grandmother passed away. She had this old Victorian house, just outside of Boston, the kind of place with creaky stairs, stained glass windows, and a garden she adored. Out of all my relatives, she was the only one who ever made me feel seen. She'd tell me, "Daniel, you've got strong hands and a kind heart. Don't ever let them make you think you're less." When she died, the house became the center of family arguments. Everyone wanted a piece of it. Michael argued that it should be kept in the family for generations. My mother wanted to turn it into some sort of family retreat. My cousins wanted to rent it out for income. And me? I was the one actually maintaining it. I was the one mowing the lawn, fixing the plumbing, keeping the lights on, paying the taxes because no one else lifted a finger. But to them, I wasn't making decisions. I was just the caretaker, the wallet, the handyman. That's when I started to realize they didn't see me as family. Not really. They saw me as a resource, a backup plan. The weeks after my grandmother's funeral were some of the most exhausting of my life. While everyone else mourned in their own way, I found myself stuck with responsibility for the house. The old Victorian was beautiful, but it was also falling apart. The roof leaked in 3 places. The plumbing rattled like it was coughing up its last breath, and the backyard was an overgrown jungle. Every weekend, I was there patching, cutting, hauling, and paying for supplies out of my own pocket. At first, I thought maybe this was temporary, that once the shock of losing Grandma wore off, the rest of the family would step in. But no one did. Michael was too busy networking in New York. My mom said she was too tired. My cousins stopped returning my calls. Yet somehow, they all had strong opinions about what should be done with the house. One night, we had a family meeting in my parents' dining room. I remember sitting at the table, covered in dust and paint stains, while Michael strolled in wearing a tailored suit like he had just stepped off a magazine cover. "I think we should renovate the place," he said smoothly, as if he hadn't lifted a finger. "Turn it into a family vacation home. It'll be a symbol of Grandma's legacy, a place for us to gather, celebrate milestones, maybe even rent it out during the off-season." Everyone nodded, impressed. My mom actually clapped her hands. "Oh, Michael, that's wonderful. Such vision." I cleared my throat. "That sounds nice, but renovations cost money. A lot of money. And right now, I'm the one paying the bills just to keep the house standing." The room went quiet for a moment. Then my uncle chuckled. "Well, you've always been good with that kind of thing, Daniel. You'll figure it out." I looked around the table. Not a single person offered to contribute. Not one. They all just assumed I'd keep footing the bill. Michael leaned back in his chair, Come on, Don, don't be so negative. You've got a steady job, you're good with tools. This is what you're good at. Let me handle the vision. You handle the work. That word again. Work. That was all they saw me as, hands and a paycheck. Something snapped in me that night. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. But I made a silent decision. I was done being their backup plan. Over the next few months, I kept maintaining the house, but not for them. I did it for me. Quietly, I started researching property laws, taxes, and ownership. Turned out my grandmother had left the house directly to me in her will. No one had paid attention to the paperwork, probably assuming it belonged to the family as a whole. When I discovered that, I felt both vindicated and terrified. It was mine, legally mine. But I knew what would happen if I said that out loud. The endless guilt trips, the accusations of selfishness, the screaming phone calls. So I kept quiet. Instead of telling them, I made plans. Real plans. For the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about what my family wanted. I was thinking about what I wanted. I poured myself into fixing the house properly. I saved every spare dollar from work. And slowly, the house began to shine again. The roof stopped leaking. The garden bloomed. The wooden floors glowed after I refinished them. Every time I walked through those halls, I heard my grandmother's voice in my head. Don't let them make you think you're less. For the first time, I believed her. Then came the breaking point. It was a Sunday afternoon when Michael showed up unannounced. He strolled through the front door like he owned the place, talking on his phone. When he finally hung up, he gave me a cursory glance. Nice work, Don, he said, waving at the newly painted walls. This is coming along great. I'll get some investors interested. Maybe turn this into a boutique rental property. We'll all make money. I froze. Investors? Excuse me? I asked. He smirked. Don't worry. I'll handle the business side. You just keep doing what you're doing. You're good with the hammer, not the contracts. I felt my hands shake. Not from fear, but from anger. For years, I had swallowed their dismissive comments. But this time, I couldn't. This isn't your project, Michael, I said firmly. This house belongs to me. The smile on his face vanished. What are you talking about? Check the will, I said, pulling a copy from the drawer. Grandma left it to me. Not the family. Not you. Me. He went pale as he scanned the paper. Then his expression hardened. This must be a mistake. She never would've. She did. I cut him off. And I'm done being your handyman, your wallet, your safety net. This is my house. My decision. For the first time in my life, I saw Michael speechless. And God, it felt good. The silence after my confrontation with Michael didn't last long. By that evening, the entire family knew. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Calls, texts, voicemails, all demanding an explanation. I ignored most of them, but eventually, I picked up when my mother called. Daniel Harris, she snapped the moment I answered, her voice sharp as broken glass. How dare you keep this from us? That house is part of this family's history. It doesn't belong to you. I took a deep breath. It does, Mom, legally. Grandma left it to me. I've been paying the taxes, the bills, the repairs. No one else even lifted a finger. That's not the point. She shot back. It's not about money. It's about tradition. About keeping us together. Do you know how selfish you sound? Selfish. That word rolled around in my head like poison. After years of giving and sacrificing, now I was selfish because I didn't want to hand over the only thing that was truly mine. Mom, I said quietly, when have I ever been allowed to have something of my own? When Michael got into Harvard, you threw him a party. When I graduated, you told me at least I could feed myself. When anyone in this family needed money, I gave it. When anyone needed repairs, I was there. But the one time something actually belongs to me, suddenly I'm selfish. She went silent for a moment. Then, in a cold tone I'll never forget, she said, You're turning your back on your family, Daniel. Don't expect us to stand by you if you go through with this. And with that, she hung up. The fallout was swift. My uncle sent me long emails about how I was betraying Grandma's memory. My cousins wrote angry messages saying I was profiting off family property. Michael showed up in person again, this time furious. You think you've won something here, he hissed, standing in the doorway of the house I just finished repairing. You think holding on to this pile of bricks makes you better than me? You'll regret this, Don. You're nothing without this family. I stared at him for a long time before answering. Funny, Michael. That's exactly what I used to think. That I was nothing. But now I see the truth. I've been the only one holding this family together. And I'm done. He stormed out without another word. For a while, I was shaken. It's not easy cutting ties with your own blood, no matter how toxic they've been. Nights were the worst. I'd lie awake in my grandmother's old bedroom, wondering if I was the villain here. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was selfish. But then morning would come, and I'd step into the garden I'd restored, the sunlight hitting the flowers I planted with my own hands. And I'd remember why I was doing this. This house wasn't just wood and stone. It was proof that I was more than their backup plan. It was mine, and I had a choice: cling to the past or finally build a future for myself. So I made a decision. I put the house up for sale. The day I signed the papers, my hands trembled. The buyer was a young couple, newly married, who lit up the moment they stepped inside. They talked about raising kids here, about filling the rooms with laughter. Watching their eyes sparkle, I knew I was doing the right thing. This house deserved to be loved, not fought over. When the deal closed, I walked out of the lawyer's office with a check that represented more money than I had ever seen in my life. And for the first time, I felt free. Of course, freedom came with backlash. The moment my family found out the house was sold, the firestorm reignited. My mom called me crying, saying I had destroyed the family's legacy. My uncle threatened to sue Michael. Well, he didn't even try to hide his rage. "You betrayed us, Don," he said over the phone, his voice shaking. "You'll regret this. You've burned every bridge." Maybe I had. But as I stood on the balcony of my tiny apartment that night, check safely deposited in the bank, I realized something. I didn't feel regret. I felt peace. For once, I wasn't just the backup plan. I was the one writing the plan. After I sold the house, there was no going back. Every call, every message from my family was dripping with anger, guilt, or manipulation. I stopped answering. I stopped explaining. For the first time in my life, I stopped trying to earn their approval. Instead, I started asking myself a question I'd never truly considered. What do I want? It was terrifying at first. When you've spent your whole life serving others, silence feels heavy. But slowly, that silence turned into possibility. I took a leave of absence from work. I had saved a modest emergency fund before. And now with the money from the house sale, I had options. For once, I wasn't just surviving paycheck to paycheck. So I booked a flight. Not to New York, not to California, not anywhere my family would expect. I flew to Scotland, a place my grandmother used to talk about with stars in her eyes. She had grown up there before immigrating to the US. And she always told me, "If you ever get the chance, Daniel, walk the highlands for me." So I did. For 2 weeks, I hiked through rolling green hills, visited quiet villages, and stood on cliffs where the ocean smashed against the rocks. I breathed air that tasted like freedom, and with every step, I shed the weight of being the backup plan. When I returned home, I felt lighter, clearer. I rented a small apartment in downtown Boston. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. No family drama, no one barging in with demands, no constant expectation that I'd fix everything. I also started therapy. I realized I had been carrying years of resentment and self-doubt that weren't going to vanish just because I'd sold the house. The sessions were hard. Sometimes I left feeling raw and exposed. But slowly, I began to see the patterns. How I'd been conditioned to measure my worth only in what I could provide. How selfish had been weaponized against me whenever I tried to set boundaries. And for the first time, I began to rebuild my identity. Not as Michael's brother, not as my parents' handyman, but simply as Daniel. Of course, my family didn't disappear. On Thanksgiving, I got an email from my mother. It was long and dramatic. The subject line reading, "This family is broken without you." She went on about how I had abandoned them. How Michael was stressed from carrying the family burden now. How I owed it to them to come back, apologize, and make things right. I stared at the screen for a long time. Old guilt tugged at me. The Daniel from a year ago would have dropped everything, shown up at her doorstep, and begged for forgiveness. But I wasn't that Daniel anymore. I replied with a single sentence. "I'm not coming back. But I hope you have a nice holiday." Then I closed my laptop and went to dinner with friends from work. Friends who actually valued me for who I was, not what I could give. And for the first time in my life, Thanksgiving felt like mine. As months passed, something unexpected happened. I started dreaming again. With part of the money from the house, I invested in a small construction business of my own. Nothing big, just a team of 5 guys and some decent equipment. But it was mine. We specialized in restoring old houses, the kind that reminded me of Grandma's Victorian. I poured my heart into every project, and clients noticed. Word spread, jobs picked up, and one evening, standing in a freshly restored townhouse, I realized I had built something real. Not for my family, not to earn scraps of validation, but for myself. That's when Michael reached out again. He showed up at my office, looking tired, his perfect suit a little less sharp than usual. "Don," he started, "we need to talk." I almost laughed. "We?" "I've been thinking," he continued, "maybe we can partner up. Combine your practical skills with my business connections. We could build something huge together. A family legacy. I looked at him, the brother I had admired, resented, envied, and finally walked away from. And for the first time, I felt nothing but clarity. No, Michael, I said. I don't need a partner. And I don't need a family legacy. I've already got one. He blinked, clearly stunned I wasn't jumping at the offer. You're making a mistake. Maybe, I said with a shrug. But it's my mistake to make. And with that, I walked him out of my office, closed the door, and felt the last chain break. I wasn't the backup plan anymore. I was the plan. For a while, life settled into something I had never known before. Peace. My days were full of work I cared about. Evenings were spent with friends who laughed with me instead of at me. And nights weren't haunted by guilt. But peace doesn't mean the past disappears. One chilly March morning, I got a knock on my apartment door. When I opened it, I found my mother standing there, clutching her coat tight around her shoulders. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. Mom, I asked, surprised. She hadn't visited me in over a year. Can I come in? She whispered. I hesitated but stepped aside. She sat at my small kitchen table, looking around as if the apartment were a foreign country. After a long silence, she said, Your brother's in trouble. I sat down across from her. What kind of trouble? She sighed heavily. His investments. They didn't pan out. He's in debt. Serious debt. And he needs help. There it was. The same old pattern. The family was in crisis. And they had come knocking on my door. Because I was the reliable one. The backup plan. I folded my arms. Mom, I'm sorry Michael is struggling. But I'm not his safety net anymore. I can't bail him out. Her eyes filled with tears. Daniel, he's your brother. Family helps family. I felt the old sting of those words. Family helps family, except when it came to me. I thought about all the years I had carried them. All the times I had been called selfish, the one time I said no. Family should help family, I said softly. But it goes both ways. When did Michael ever help me? When did anyone in this family ever support me? The first time I stood up for myself. You called me a traitor. You turned your back on me. And now you expect me to fix his mistakes. She flinched, but didn't argue. Maybe because she knew I was right. I continued, I love you, Mom. But I won't go back to being the backup plan. Not for Michael. Not for anyone. Her lips trembled. For a second, I thought she might lash out like before. But instead, she just nodded weakly, stood up, and walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned back and said, I hope one day you'll forgive us. Then she was gone. For hours after, I sat at the table replaying the conversation. A part of me felt cold. The old Daniel would have jumped to rescue his brother. But the new Daniel, he knew better. Sometimes love means saying no. Weeks passed. Michael never reached out himself. Though I heard through the grapevine that he had declared bankruptcy. My mother tried a few more times, sending short, pleading texts. I answered politely but firmly. I wasn't getting involved. And then, one evening, something remarkable happened. I was invited to a local business award ceremony. My company had been nominated for Best Emerging Contractor. It felt surreal, me, the kid who was once told he was only good for paying bills, standing in a ballroom full of entrepreneurs and innovators. When my name was called as the winner, the applause shook the room. I walked to the stage, the spotlight warm on my face, and for the first time, I let myself fully feel it, pride. Not because I had outshined Michael, not because I had proved my family wrong, but because I had finally chosen myself and built something of my own. As I held the award, I thought of my grandmother. I could almost hear her whispering, strong hands, kind heart. Don't let them make you think you're less. I smiled. This, I thought, is for you, Grandma. Later that night, after the ceremony, I walked alone through the city streets. The air was crisp. The lights reflected off wet pavement. And for once, the future didn't scare me. I knew my family might never see me the way I wish they would. I knew Michael might always resent me, and my mother might never truly understand. But that was okay. Because I finally understood myself. I wasn't their backup plan. I was my own plan, and that was enough. The months following the award ceremony felt like stepping into a life I had always wanted but never dared claim. My company continued to grow steadily. I hired more people, invested in better equipment, and even started mentoring young contractors, those who reminded me of myself. Overlooked and underestimated. It wasn't just about work, though. I finally had time to explore hobbies I'd abandoned long ago. I painted. I ran. I traveled to small towns and quiet beaches. I even joined a local book club, laughing and debating with people who didn't care who my brother was or what my parents thought of me. For the first time, my life was entirely my own. Occasionally, news of my family reached me. Michael's business failed entirely, forcing him to move back to Boston and live with my parents temporarily. They called, asking for small favors, borrowing money, asking for advice, relying on me to smooth things over. And every time, I said the same thing, no. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally realized that love without boundaries isn't love. It's control. And I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. One afternoon, my mother came to the office unannounced. She didn't knock this time. She just walked in, her face tired and lined, holding a small bouquet of flowers. "Daniel," she said quietly, "can we talk?" I gestured to the couch. "Sure, Mom. What's on your mind?" She sat down and took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about the things I said to you, how I treated you. I realized I was wrong." For a moment, I didn't respond. My instincts told me to be guarded, but I saw genuine remorse in her eyes. "I know I can't undo the past," she continued, "but I hope you can forgive me someday. I see now that you are not just Michael's brother. You are your own person, strong, capable, independent. I'm proud of you, Daniel, truly." Something in me softened, not completely, but enough to acknowledge her words. I nodded. "Thank you, Mom. That means a lot." She left soon after, leaving me with a quiet apartment and a sense of closure I hadn't thought possible. With my family at a distance, I began focusing on building a life of my choosing. I invested in my apartment, turning it into a space that reflected who I was, bright, welcoming, and unburdened. I hosted small dinners for friends, hosted charity events for local schools, and traveled whenever I could. The biggest change, though, was inside me. I no longer measured my worth based on anyone else's expectations. I no longer hesitated to say no, to protect my time and energy, to honor my own needs. For the first time, I felt free in a way I couldn't have imagined when I was a boy, always following the path someone else carved for me. One evening, sitting by the window and watching the city lights flicker, I reflected on the journey that brought me here. From the boy who felt invisible, the backup plan in a family that adored his brother, to the man who had claimed his own destiny, it felt surreal. I thought about the house, the fights, the tears, and the silent victories. Selling the house had been the first real act of independence. The moment I stopped letting others dictate my life. Every step since then, from my travels to starting my business, had been built on that choice. It wasn't easy. I lost people I had once loved. I endured anger, disappointment, and even threats. But in the process, I gained something priceless, myself. I had learned a lesson many people never do: that love and respect must be mutual. That giving endlessly without recognition is not virtue, it's self-erasure. That being strong doesn't mean being silent. And being kind doesn't mean being a doormat. I smiled as I sipped my coffee. Outside, the city moved on as always, indifferent to the struggles of one man among millions. But inside, my world was finally aligned. I had fought for my own life, and I had won, not against anyone else, but for myself. And for the first time, I knew something I had always suspected but never dared admit. I didn't need to be anyone's backup plan. I was enough. I was the plan. I was Daniel Harris, fully, unapologetically, and entirely free. The past would always be there, like shadows on the edge of my vision, but I no longer feared it, because the present, and every choice I made from here on, was mine. And that was more than enough.